All right, welcome to BossCowboySports, man. We got a special surprise. And I'm gonna just tell you like this. Some things is obvious that they happening for a real reason. So obviously people know that I've been spending the most time in terms of player needs discussing linebacker. That's who we seeing, and that's who out on this field for the Dallas Cowboys today. It's linebackers. But we got an even bigger surprise, and I'm not gonna say even bigger, but I'm gonna say it's a big surprise. If you can see right there, that's Michael Geklken. So everybody on my channel should know Michael Gehlken because that's who been asking those system questions versus matchup questions for the Dallas Cowboys. That was the guy who talked to Stephen Jones directly about Amari Cooper and asked the tough questions, but the pointed and direct and smart questions. So he don't know it, but I'm gonna really hone down and try to really lock him down and just have a real good football discussion about it. And it's just not a coincidence that even on the week that I said that I was gonna be taking off, that I'm actually getting ready to have an opportunity to talk to Michael Geklken about the system philosophy. And both of those things happened this week. Linebacker concern was what we talked about on Boss Cowboy Sports, and this system philosophy. So if you don't know by now that your voice matters, because things like this don't happen for nothing. On the exact same week, my two biggest concerns I get to see firsthand. And this is honest. And it wasn't something that I expected to happen. It's so I'm saying all that to say that, you know, when you're really doing your best to try to make your voice matter, things do happen. It really does happen. I wasn't expecting to see Michael Geklken out here. Well, Michael Geklken is sitting right there, man. And Michael Geklken is even helping, man. So he don't know it, but I'm getting ready to go talk to him and obviously, you know, make my voice matter. But it's also gonna make y'all voice matter. And we're gonna really talk about this system philosophy, because if we can really get the word out there as a fan base with Boss Cowboy Sports and other podcasters and YouTubers and people that's committed to the cause of trying to win six, it can happen. So y'all just stay with us. I don't know exactly how the day go, but we getting ready to see it. Y'all stay up. It's Boss Cowboy Sports. Guess what? As I promised, Michael Geklken is sitting right here with me with Boss Cowboy Sports. And he promised that we go talk a little bit about the Dallas Cowboys. And so first of all, this is obviously training before training camp. You excited to get out there?
Yeah, July 25th is when the Cowboys arrive in Oxnard, so I'm chomping at the bit. Good to get a little bit of taste of football here in 104 degree weather in Frisco.
Yeah, you have to be dedicated. So first of all, before we start talking about football, now I saw you doing some drills out there. What's up with that? My gut is that you just love football.
I do obviously love football. Someone asked for help. He's a Division II offensive lineman, or defensive end, so he wanted me to be an offensive tackle.
And you stepped in there. I saw you doing your Tyrone Smith impression.
It's my first time, believe it or not, being an offensive tackle.
I saw
Probably
it.
the last.
And then when you came out here, you was tossing balls. I was like, is that Michael Geklken, the reporter, or is he actually a trainer now? But Michael Geklken, I can tell you, very helpful. But one of the things that I want to talk about, because trust me, my channel know you because I featured you a lot. And I mean that. So I'm gonna tell y'all right now, when I've just ran into Michael Geklken down there, he said, how you doing? I'm Michael Geklken, the reporter. I was like, come on, I know you. And trust me, they know, because one of the things that you've been pointing out that I don't think no report has been pointing out is what I've been talking about on my channel, which is the system, offensive system versus the matchup system. And Kellen Moore has like a system philosophy. And you've been one of the only people to me that's been pointed out. So like it was a press conference. I actually wrote down your direct question because I used it a lot on my channel, but I'm gonna try to paraphrase it right now.
Yeah.
And you was talking about the fact that you was asking Kellen Moore, you said, Kellen.
You mentioned how the Chargers were kind of taking away the deep passing game.
Yeah.
What's the balance of, as an offense, you obviously want to take what the defense gives you, but is there some level at the same time, you don't want to let the defense dictate where you attack them?
Yeah, aggressively take what they give us.
I know that you pretty much like to aggressively take what the defense gives you, but is it a point to where you don't let the defense dictate where the ball is going? So where did that question come from, and where did you see where he was basically allowing with his offensive system to allow the defense to dictate where the ball was going?
I think early in the season last year in particular, the Cowboys really morphed their offensive identity based on their opponent. And so, and I think it's been a while. A lot of football has happened since then.
Yeah.
But when the offense was at its best, they were taking what defenses were giving them and, be it running the football at a greater volume or types of passes that they were doing. I'd probably been better suited to answer this question back in October, but I think tempo was always a big part of when the Cowboys offense was at its best last year. Kellen Moore did a good job, and Dak Prescott and the entire offense just pushing tempo. And they got away from that midseason, and it seems like they weren't able to really dictate things. And so that was kind of the question is, there's something to be said, no doubt, for taking what defenses give you, but you look at some of the best offenses in the league, and no matter what the defense is running, they're going to take what they want from you. And
from a playmaker standpoint?
Yeah, yes, yeah. So if it's third down and, let's say they're going to bracket your tight end, okay, you can move off of that, or there are times where you want to be, mindful of the sticks and just trust that your guy's going to get to the spot. So,
right.
Or if they're doing too high safety, are you going to just dink and dunk all day, or are you going to stretch the field because you can? You have that belief in your offense that you're going to take it. So,
right.
And I think it was a really inconsistent, uneven offense last year, and ultimately the reason why they couldn't get past the really suspect 49ers secondary and weren't able to really expose that is that they just lacked in the details.
Yeah.
With the route running, with the timing of the offense, the footwork at different positions, it just wasn't as crisp as it needed to be.
Right.
And so that's, I think, all kind of ties together. But I think ultimately that's something that the Cowboys have really stressed all offseason, is just getting those details back on track. And the CeeDee Lamb, being a number one wide receiver now in that sense, he's got to get a lot better with the details. Dak threw 10 interceptions last year, 6 were with CeeDee, the intended target. No one else was more than one.
Right.
So that's how kind of all works together.
Because the funny thing about that question, it was almost like it was a prophetic question, because it was coming across as if it was a warning. Like you were saying, is there a time to where you don't let the defense dictate where the ball is going? And it made me think about the Rams in the Super Bowl, where we all knew, our mamas knew, our daddies knew, our uncles knew,
right,
that Cooper Kupp was going to get the ball. And other offenses seem to find a way to get their best playmakers the ball, to where it seems to me, just to me, and we never prepped, he never knew what I was going to talk about, but it seems to me that Dallas Cowboys need to do a better way, just in my opinion, I want to get your thoughts on this, of targeting their best playmakers, because it looked like we was off script. Like Pollard was rested but didn't get any touches.
Mm-hmm.
CeeDee Lamb was, to me, under targeted in the playoff game. I wanted to get your thoughts on that.
I think 100%. I think part of the reason why it made sense for Amari Cooper not to be here for a third season under his contract was when you're moving off of guys the way that the Cowboys are, in terms of, we're not going to force 12 targets to Amari Cooper if we feel like it's more of a CD game, or if it's more of a Zeke game, or it's kind of some of the phraseology you hear.
Right.
I think if you're paying a guy $20 million, he needs to be somewhat matchup independent, where no matter the game, no matter the matchup, you feel comfortable going at him in some of the most critical situations of the game.
Right.
There were times over the recent years where Amari Cooper wasn't even on the field for a critical third down or a critical fourth down, and so that's why financially that didn't make a whole lot of sense.
Right.
Now the Rams, 100%, everyone in the country knew that Cooper Kupp was likely going to be targeted, and they targeted him, and they won the Super Bowl for it.
Right.
But Cowboys don't have a Cooper Kupp.
Right.
CeeDee Lamb, if he continues to develop, it's only his third NFL season.
Right.
And you look at his first year, it was 2020, so he had no spring, he had no preseason, he had a truncated training camp, then got thrown in the fire, and Dak Prescott fractures his ankle in the 5th game. And so then, it was just, I think the ability to really get him the sort of refinement in his game is naturally a work in progress, and so we'll see what kind of step he makes from his second to his third NFL season. He's one of the most critical players on this Cowboys team.
So also, that leads me to my next question, which was when you was at the Senior Bowl and you was talking to Senior Bowl to Stephen Jones. I'm sorry.
I was at the Senior Bowl this year, actually.
Oh, whenever you was talking to Stephen Jones, but
Yeah,
it was the
might have been.
famous where the cowboy face, where they showed him with their frown. It was you that was with the lead-off question, and you was talking about Amari Cooper, and you asked about you.
Back up to the decision ahead on Amari, his usage, not just production, but in terms of how often he was targeted, even when he was on the field, it was down.
Mm-hmm.
What do you make of his relative lack of involvement, especially for someone who's got the contract of a number one wide receiver?
I just think it's an offensive philosophy, and with when we had the skilled players that we had, between Kellen and Dak, I think there was a progression of where you threw the ball, and depending on how the defense played you, it would point the ball to certain places where, hey, if they're going to double over here and they're going to double over the top over here, then that's going to dictate that the ball goes here. So I think it's more of a system deal. It wasn't a thing where we just said, hey, we're not going to target Amari as much.
Is that the right
Based
system?
on the system, then does that make financial sense? You're not getting
He was talking about the fact that he was under-targeted, or you said his targets was down, even when he was on the field. You remember that?
Yeah, I think so.
And you was talking to Steve.
Combine, I believe, yeah.
Yeah, it was the combine. Thank you.
Yeah.
It was the combine, and Stephen Jones started to talk about that it's more of our system,
Right.
and it's our philosophy. And you got that last question in, but he didn't quite answer it. You said, but is it the right system? Because you were saying with a guy that was paid like Amari to be your number one, should he still have the same targets that he was having with previous years where he was having success? I want to expound on your thoughts on that.
I think it was kind of along the lines of, if you're going to pay a guy $20 million a year, for lack of a better phrase, shouldn't he see $20 million worth of targets?
Yeah,
And
I wish you would have asked that.
yeah,
That was awesome.
but I think that's ultimately with the line of part of the line of thinking was in terms of moving on from him.
Yeah.
Plus, CD's development, plus their belief that they were comfortable with Michael Gallup post ACL surgery.
Right.
But yeah, I think Amari Cooper at $20 million a year didn't make a whole lot of sense based on the usage. And maybe you could make that a criticism of the Cowboys for not using them differently.
Right.
Or you could say that for whatever reason they didn't feel comfortable turning to Amari Cooper more, making him more of a feature part of their offense, be it philosophy or otherwise. But that could be something of an indictment of what they thought of Amari Cooper, what they didn't think of Amari Cooper.
Right. Okay. Well, I also remember you made a prediction last year. I think it was on Skywalker's show, and you was talking about LVE, and you were saying that he was having a pretty good camp and training camp. I wanted to get your thoughts on LVE and then the linebackers that's coming in, because to me, it seems that the Cowboys are very focused on linebacker and building depth. And for me, reading the tea leaves, it actually to me seemed like it's coming from Dan Quinn, because Bobby Wagner came out and he said, obviously when he signed with the Rams, that he was in direct talks with Dan Quinn. So I wanted to get your thoughts on LVE and then linebacker in general, and just any other thoughts.
I think I was high on the work that Leighton did for preventative body care so he could stay healthy.
Yeah.
Because he hadn't been able to shake the injuries in recent seasons. He's kind of been the young man's Sean Lee, which isn't what you want to be in that respect.
Right.
And he had his first healthy full season in terms of he played all 17 games, 18 including the postseason. But I would think it's pretty clear that the Cowboys see Leighton, and I think the entire NFL, based on how his free agency went, see him as somewhat limited.
Yeah.
I think it's a 1 year, $2 million base contract worth up to $3 million. And that's not what I think when he came onto the scene the way he did in 18, what people would have thought his second contract would have been.
Right.
And so, and I think just the way that you see how instinctive Michael Parsons, not just his athletic ability, but how instinctive he is. There's times where, there's one play, I'm trying to think of against who it was, I don't know if it was the Vikings, but reacting to a play in the left flat, and Micah just sees it, plants his right foot, and just goes, and he flies right past Leighton. And it's kind of a bit of a reality as to where both those players are. But Leighton, he's a veteran. He's a guy who cares. He wants to be a leader, and it's difficult to lead when the production isn't there, when you're only playing 25 snaps on defense a game. It no doubt hamstrings your ability to kind of fulfill, that role that you envision for yourself as a player. But, he's back, so we'll see how it goes. But I think the Cowboys clearly don't consider themselves to be a finished product in terms of where they stand at linebacker. They're open for depth there. Anthony Barr is someone with whom they've had communication. Financially, they haven't been able to kind of come together. But he's, to my knowledge, still a free agent. So that could be a name to watch here as camp comes. These guys usually land at home around the start of camp or maybe the week into the camp, such as injuries take hold elsewhere in the league. So
kind of like Malik Hooker.
Yeah, exactly.
Like Malik Hooker came in right during the start of camp.
Yeah.
And I guess that's when the reality kicks in that, hey, you better take something if you want to stay in this league type of deal.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess, because it's real hot, y'all, believe me, it's hot. He's doing us a favor right now. It's hot in Frisco right now, Dallas, Texas. So I'm going to give you one more question because of the training camp. What are some of the things that you're excited about going into training camp?
I think seeing just the progression of certain players, coaches, just seeing how they take last year, what was a strong year overall, but obviously fell well short of expectation with the first round playoff ouster.
Yeah.
But Michael Parsons is the first name that kind of comes to mind when you look at what he did last year. The question of, okay, what's he going to do year two? And some people would say, well, the league has got a full season of tape on him. How is he going to respond to a little more focused offensive plans for him? But I was talking to Brian Baldinger this weekend at the OL Mastermind Summit about this very thing, and he thinks it's a bit of a misnomer, this idea, and I would agree with him, of how can Micah replicate his success, because it's not so simple knowing what Micah does and then stopping what Micah does. Because last year, teams understood his skill set, his hand usage, his versatility, his speed. They saw it on film. But just because he's fast doesn't mean that you're going to be able to slow him down. And so seeing also a lot of NFL coaches feel like the greatest jump a player makes developmentally is between his first and his second season. And so he's going to be better from where he was last year.
Yeah.
And so which is a scary thought. And so I was thinking about this recently, like, who's the best defensive player in the NFL? I think Aaron Donald is probably the obvious answer. I think Michael Parsons himself would say that.
Yep.
But number two, I would make the argument that above TJ Watt, above some of these other names, he's already there.
Yeah.
I think he's earned that based on how unique of a player he is, athletically, and also just what you can do from him, inside linebacker, edge rusher. He's a dynamic, rare guy. Along those lines, Trayvon Diggs, I'm curious to see in Oxnard where he is from a technique standpoint. Yeah, he had the interceptions. He has a rare ball skills, but I think people kind of nitpick him appropriately because of just
the yardage.
The yardage. And I think it's easy to forget just how new the position is to him, where this was a wide receiver when he first got to Alabama. And so, he obviously trains with Stephon, and he's getting the coaching that he's getting with Al Harris and the sort. So I think seeing his progression and just more broadly the entire Dan Quinn defense, something Dan Quinn and we spoke at the Combine, and there was a book that he really values as a coach and as a leader. It's called Legacy. It's about the All Blacks, the New Zealand rugby team, and there's like 12 leadership lessons in this book. And within it, they say when you're on top of your game, change your game. And so after all the success that he had in 2021, what's the next iteration of a Dan Quinn defense in Dallas? And I think that to me is fascinating.
Yeah.
And offensively, I could talk all day about training camp, but I just think the wide receiver position is really interesting when you've lost Amari Cooper, you've lost Cedric Wilson, you're asking a lot of CeeDee Lamb, and he understands how he's got to step up. And so how does he do, and how does Jalen Tolbert, who's probably going to be the primary punt returner, we'll see how that pans out. But just how it kind of all comes together and how the rhythm and timing come back to this offense. I think Kellen Moore had a very introspective start of the offseason based on the way that San Francisco game went. And so just seeing how this entire team responds from that moment, I think there's going to be a lot of intrigue in Oxnard.
So again, this is the training before the training camp. Obviously we was watching guys practice. Some of those guys was Dallas Cowboys, not as much today, but in general. But I will say this, your voice absolutely does matter. I'm glad y'all got a chance to hear from Michael Geklken. Y'all make sure y'all follow him on his Twitter. What's your Twitter?
It's Gehlken NFL.
All right, trust me, you gotta follow him, and I'm gonna make sure I put it at the bottom. So follow him because when training camp going on, he's gonna be out there. We're gonna be using his eyes to get our stories. So y'all definitely stay up. It's obvious that your voice matter. Y'all know this wasn't by accident for me to run into Michael Geklken as much as we've been talking about some of his fire questions on the channel. So definitely your voice matter, and y'all stay tuned. The more that's gonna be coming. Boss Cowboy Sports, y'all stay up. Peace.